I spent $20,000, every cent I had saved, every extra shift I worked, every plan for myself I had postponed, to give my wife the vacation she said she had always dreamed of. Hawaii, white sand, turquoise water, sunsets that melt into the horizon. I pictured her smile, the way her hand would feel in mine as we walked along the beach. I thought this trip would remind us of why we married, why we built a life together. But at the airport, standing in line for check-in, the words that slipped from her mouth cut through me like glass. David, we forgot to buy your ticket. We'll handle it once we get there. You should just wait at home. My blood turned cold. My hands trembled as if I had been dropped into ice water. Around us, families laughed, children tugged on suitcases, couples held hands. And me? I stood frozen, staring at the woman I had promised forever to. I searched her face, hoping for a hint of a joke, a smile, anything. But Emily's eyes darted away, avoiding mine. She clutched her passport and boarding pass to her chest, like a shield. Behind her, her father, Robert, cleared his throat, wearing that polished smile I'd seen too many times in his business meetings. Don't worry, David. It was just an oversight. Once we land, we'll sort everything out. No need to cause a scene. No need to cause a scene. My father-in-law always had a way of wrapping poison in honey. I wanted to shout, to demand answers. How could they forget my ticket when I had transferred $20,000 to cover the trip? Every penny went into Emily's hands, then into her father's account. They promised they'd take care of the arrangements. They promised. Emily leaned closer, whispering like she was embarrassed to be seen with me. Please, David, don't make this harder. We'll fix it later. Just trust us. Trust. The word felt like a cruel joke. I had trusted her when she said we needed this trip to heal. I had trusted her when she said her parents should handle the finances because they know how to manage travel better. I had trusted her with my savings, with my faith, with my love. And now, standing in an airport surrounded by strangers, trust was the very thing crumbling beneath me. The loudspeaker blared the boarding call. Families gathered their bags. Couples kissed. Emily hugged me quickly, almost mechanically, like I was an obligation she needed to cross off a list. Her mother gave me a small nod, as though I were a distant acquaintance, not the man who had married her daughter. Then, in a blur of motion, they turned and walked away. The three of them, Emily and her parents, disappearing into the gate without a second glance. I stood still, staring, waiting for her to look back, for her to wave me over, laugh, and say, "Of course I bought your ticket, David." How could I not? But the gate closed. The line vanished. The screen flipped to "Departed," and with it, so did my family. I don't remember walking back through the terminal. I don't remember how long I sat in the parking garage, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the concrete wall as my chest hollowed out. All I could hear was the echo of Emily's voice. "We forgot to buy your ticket." Forgot? Number. This wasn't forgetting. You don't forget the man who paid for the trip. You don't forget the husband who drained his savings so you could drink cocktails under a palm tree. The more I replayed the moment, the more it twisted inside me. My father-in-law's calm assurance, my mother-in-law's silence, Emily's refusal to meet my eyes. They weren't panicked, they weren't surprised. No, they were prepared. This was no accident. As I drove home, the city lights blurred through my windshield. I wanted to call her, to demand she tell me the truth. But what would she say? Another excuse? Another soft lie meant to quiet me down? By the time I pulled into our driveway, the house looked foreign, cold. The flowers Emily had planted wilted in the front yard. The porch light flickered. Everything seemed to mock me. I stepped inside, dropped my suitcase, and the silence swallowed me whole. No laughter, no family, just me, alone with four walls and $20,000 less to my name. I sank onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. For hours, I sat there, replaying every detail of the last few months. The way Emily had grown distant, the hushed phone calls with her parents, the insistence that her father should handle the money because he was experienced. And slowly, the truth dug its claws into me. They hadn't forgotten. They had planned this. Every smile, every reassurance, every trust me, all of it was designed to blind me, to strip me of my savings, to leave me behind like I was nothing. The clock ticked past midnight. The refrigerator hummed. My phone buzzed with a notification, a bank alert reminding me of my dwindling balance. And as I stared into the darkness of my empty living room, a single thought hardened in my mind. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning. The first night without them was the loudest silence I had ever known. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the empty space beside me colder than the air conditioning humming in the corner. Emily's perfume still lingered on her pillow, faint but sharp enough to cut me open. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her walking away at the airport. No hesitation, no regret, just gone. Morning came, though it felt no different from night. The sunlight spilled through the blinds, painting stripes across the living room floor, but it couldn't warm me. I brewed coffee out of habit, but it tasted bitter, like ashes. The house was spotless, yet it felt like a crime scene. On the kitchen table sat a folder of receipts, reminders of the life I had tried to build. Every bill I had paid, every sacrifice I had made, every dollar funneled into a dream that no longer belonged to me. I picked it up, thumbed through the pages, and laughed bitterly. $20,000 for what? For abandonment. For humiliation. The phone rang mid-morning. It was Robert, my father-in-law. For a brief second, hope flickered inside me. Maybe he'd call to apologize, to admit a mistake, to promise they were booking me on the next flight. But when I answered, his voice was calm, detached, businesslike. "David, I just wanted to check in. Everything is fine here. Emily is fine. We'll see you when we return." That was it. No explanation, no apology, just a message that they were doing perfectly fine without me. I clenched the phone so hard my knuckles whitened. My chest burned, my pulse hammered in my ears. "Why, Robert? Why did you do this to me?" I asked, my voice shaking. He sighed as though I were a child who didn't understand how the world worked. "David, you'll understand one day. Right now, it's better this way," and then the line went dead. Better this way. The words echoed like a curse. For 3 days, I wandered the house like a ghost. I didn't eat, I didn't shave, I barely slept. I just replayed every detail, every smile, every word they had said leading up to the trip. The lies weren't new. I just hadn't seen them for what they were. By the fourth day, something shifted. I caught my reflection in the mirror, unshaven, eyes hollow, shoulders slumped, and I didn't recognize the man staring back. He looked like a victim, a man defeated, and for the first time in my life, I hated him. Number. I wasn't going to let them strip me of everything. Not my money, not my dignity, not my future. I showered, I shaved, I dressed in clean clothes, and I sat down at the table with a notepad. My hands trembled as I picked up the pen, but my mind was clear. Step 1, gather proof. Step 2, find leverage. Step 3, make them regret underestimating me. It wasn't revenge I wanted, not exactly. It was justice, balance. If they thought they could discard me like yesterday's news, they had forgotten who I was. I wasn't just the quiet husband who worked late hours and handed over paychecks. I wasn't just the man who trusted too much. I was David Miller, and I was done being silent. That night, I dug through emails, receipts, bank statements. I traced every dollar that had left my account, every transfer Emily had urged me to make. Patterns began to emerge. Money routed through Robert's business. Withdrawals timed perfectly with vacation expenses. The betrayal was deeper than a forgotten ticket. This was theft, manipulation, a setup. And the more I uncovered, the more the fire inside me grew. They thought they had left me broken, but all they had done was wake me up. I didn't know yet how I would strike back. But I knew one thing for certain. When they returned from Hawaii, laughing, tanned, and smug, they wouldn't find the same man they had abandoned. They would find someone ready, someone stronger, someone dangerous to their carefully built world. The house was no longer silent. It buzzed with purpose. Every night I sat hunched over the dining table, papers spread out like puzzle pieces, bank transfers, wire receipts, phone bills. The sting of betrayal had turned into fuel. For the first time in years, my mind was sharper than ever. But I knew one thing: anger alone wouldn't win. If I wanted justice, I needed help. Someone who could see what I couldn't. Someone who lived in the shadows of money and contracts, who understood the game Robert had been playing long before I married Emily. On the fifth day, I walked into a small cafe downtown. My hands shook as I carried a folder of documents tucked under my arm. The man waiting at the corner table didn't look like much at first glance, just another professional in a gray suit, sipping black coffee. But when his eyes lifted to mine, I felt it immediately. This was someone who didn't waste time with small talk. David Miller? His voice was calm, low, like he already knew the answer. Yes, I said, sliding into the seat. My name's Daniel Cole. You came recommended. The word gave me pause. I hadn't told many people what had happened, just one old friend from college who worked in finance. Apparently, that was enough. I opened the folder and pushed it across the table. They took $20,000 from me. My wife, her parents. They planned it. They left me behind, and I want the truth out. I want them to pay for what they've done. Daniel flipped through the documents, his eyes scanning faster than I thought possible. He didn't ask pointless questions. He didn't interrupt. When he finally set the papers down, he leaned back, fingers steepled. This isn't just a family betrayal, he said quietly. This is fraud. Misappropriation of funds. If what you're telling me is true, they didn't just betray your marriage, they broke the law. My pulse quickened. Fraud. The word hung heavy in the air, more powerful than any emotion I'd felt in the last week. So what do? I asked. Daniel smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was sharp, like a blade being drawn. You let me dig. You let me follow the money, expose the cracks, and when they come back from their little vacation, tanned and smug, you'll be standing there with more than anger. You'll have leverage, enough to destroy the illusion they've built. I sat back, absorbing his words. For the first time since that day at the airport, I didn't feel powerless. I felt dangerous. That night, I walked home under the streetlights, my folder lighter than before, my chest heavier with anticipation. Emily thought she knew me. Robert thought I was weak. They thought they could humiliate me and walk away untouched. But now I wasn't alone. Now I had someone in a suit, someone who could turn their game against them. And when they returned, they would find not a broken husband, but a man ready to burn their carefully built world to the ground. The following week felt like living in two worlds. By day, I was still the man neighbors saw watering his lawn, waving politely, pretending nothing had happened. But by night, I became someone else entirely, a silent partner in Daniel's investigation. Every evening we met in his office, a place that looked nothing like the marble towers downtown. His was a modest suite above a printing shop, but the walls were lined with filing cabinets, and his desk carried the weight of secrets people paid to bury. Daniel moved with the precision of a surgeon. One night, he slid a document across the table. "Do you recognize this account number?" I leaned closer. My stomach dropped. "That's Robert's," I whispered. "Emily's father. That's where I wired the money." Daniel nodded. "Good, because look here." He tapped the page, where rows of transactions painted a story clearer than words ever could. Your $20,000 left his account within 24 hours, broken into 4 smaller transfers. Classic laundering tactic. I swallowed hard. "Where did it go?" Daniel flipped the page. "Vacation packages, jewelry store in Waikiki, a personal line of credit. They didn't forget your ticket, David. They used you as the funding source." The room tilted. My mind replayed Emily's voice at the airport. "We'll fix this once we get there. Trust us." The lie had been rehearsed, perfectly timed. Daniel leaned back, watching me absorb the blow. "This isn't just about you. From what I see, Robert's been running schemes for years. He ropes in family members, uses their money, and hides behind the excuse of oversights or delays. But this time, he got greedy. He left a trail. I clenched my fists. So what's next?" Daniel's smile was razor thin. "Next, we build leverage. I'll subpoena records if we need to, but we don't want court just yet. Court is slow, messy. Instead, we prepare something stronger, undeniable proof, timed perfectly for their return. You'll confront them, not as the betrayed husband begging for answers, but as a man holding their future in his hands." For the first time I could picture it. The arrivals terminal. Emily's shocked face. Robert's arrogance crumbling when Daniel handed him the evidence. But part of me still wrestled with doubt. What if Emily didn't know? What if this was all Robert's doing? Daniel's gaze hardened. "Then why did she tell you to wait at home? Why didn't she fight for you at that gate?" Silence filled the room. I had no answer. That night, back home, I sat in the living room staring at our wedding photo. Emily's smile looked different now. Not joyful, calculated. My chest tightened as realization settled deeper. I hadn't lost my wife at the airport. I had lost her long before. Daniel's voice echoed in my mind. "You'll confront them not as a victim, but as a man with power." And for the first time in weeks, I looked forward to the day they returned. 3 nights later, Daniel called me into his office again. He didn't look up when I walked in. Papers were spread across his desk like a puzzle in mid-solution. "David," he said, finally lifting his eyes, "I think it's time you stop giving Emily the benefit of the doubt." My heart skipped. "What do you mean?" He pushed a folder toward me. Inside was a set of emails printed in neat black ink. At first the words blurred, but as I read, every line carved deeper into me. "Emily, confirm the transfer by Wednesday. He still thinks the ticket issue was a mistake. Don't worry, he won't cause trouble. R." I gripped the paper so hard it crumpled in my hands. "She knew," I whispered. "She knew all along." Daniel nodded grimly. "She wasn't just a passenger in this scheme. She was the bridge. She soothed you when you questioned, reassured you at the gate, then helped funnel your money exactly where Robert wanted it." I sank into the chair. My chest felt heavy, like the air itself didn't want me to breathe. All those years of trust, all the nights I thought we were building something together, and in a single printed page I saw it collapse. Daniel's tone softened. Not sympathetic, but firm, like a mentor bracing a student for impact. This is the part most people break, David. Betrayal from a spouse isn't just theft. It's identity shattering. But you need to hold it together, because if you don't, they win twice. I pressed my palms to my face, trying to hold back the wave of anger. What do we do now? Daniel slid another document across the desk. We don't just catch them lying, we catch them bragging. It was a bank statement, but this one wasn't Robert's. It was Emily's. A new account I'd never seen, opened only 2 weeks before the trip. The balance read $18,764. Daniel tapped the figure. Nearly all of your money. She didn't just play along, she pocketed her share. The room spun again. I stared at the numbers, the neat little ledger that didn't lie. It wasn't some clerical error or misunderstanding. Emily had signed her name on it. My wife? My partner? Daniel leaned forward, voice low and sharp. When they land back here, they're expecting you broken, alone, maybe even apologetic, begging them to explain. But instead, he pointed to the folder of evidence, you'll be standing with me. And we'll have the truth in black and white. I looked at the papers again, the emails, the bank statement, the trail of deceit laid bare. And in that moment, something inside me hardened. The grief was still there, but beneath it, a steel resolve began to form. Emily had worn her mask well, too well, but masks eventually slip, and when hers did, the world she'd built with her father was going to come crashing down. The night before their return, I couldn't sleep. I walked the halls of my house like a ghost, touching the picture frames, the furniture, the life I thought I'd built. Every corner whispered of Emily, her laugh in the kitchen, her perfume in the bedroom, her voice telling me everything would be okay. But now, those echoes felt like lies. At midnight, Daniel arrived. He set his briefcase on the dining table and opened it with a practiced snap. Inside were neatly organized folders, a small digital recorder, and a manila envelope so thick it seemed to sag under its own weight. "This," he said, sliding the envelope toward me, "is everything we need. Bank records, email correspondence, travel receipts, even a few photographs I pulled from a contact in Honolulu. Robert and Emily didn't just spend your money on that trip. They flaunted it." He laid out glossy prints one by one. There was Emily in a dress I'd never seen before, a diamond bracelet flashing on her wrist. Robert raising a glass of champagne at some luxury resort. Her mother leaning back on a sunbed, sunglasses hiding her eyes but not her satisfaction. It wasn't just a vacation, it was a celebration of my humiliation. Daniel's voice cut through my rage. "Tomorrow you don't beg. You don't yell. You let them walk into this trap with smiles still on their faces. The shock will be sharper that way." I swallowed hard. "What exactly do we do?" He leaned in, lowering his voice as though the walls might be listening. "When they land, they'll expect you alone. Instead, you'll be standing with me. I'll confront Robert directly with the documents, but the real blow is yours to deliver. Emily needs to see that you know. No tears, no pleading, just the truth, laid bare." I clenched my fists beneath the table. "And after that?" Daniel gave a thin, wolfish smile. "After that, we make them choose. They can return every cent or face charges that will follow them for years. Fraud, conspiracy, wire transfers across state lines. Trust me, the threat will be enough. Robert knows prison isn't just for strangers. It's for people like him, too." The words hung in the air like a blade. For the first time, I saw a path forward. Not just survival, but justice. Later that night, as I sat alone with the evidence spread before me, I imagined their faces. Emily's surprise twisting into fear, Robert's arrogance curdling into panic. For weeks, they had counted on me being powerless. Tomorrow, they would see the man they had underestimated, and when the plane doors opened, I would be there. Not as the abandoned husband left behind at an airport gate, but as the reckoning they never saw coming. The airport smelled of burnt coffee and jet fuel. Passengers streamed past me, dragging suitcases, hugging loved ones, laughing as if the world had never betrayed them. But for me, time slowed. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest as I stood beside Daniel. His suit was sharp, his face unreadable, his briefcase in hand like a loaded weapon. The arrival screen blinked. Flight 278 landed. I drew a breath so deep it felt like it might break me in half. "This is it," I muttered. Daniel gave a small nod. "Remember, silence is power. Let the evidence speak louder than your anger." The automatic doors opened, a wave of travelers spilled into the terminal, and then, there they were, Emily first. She looked radiant, tanned from the Hawaiian sun, wearing a silk blouse I'd never seen before. Her eyes searched the crowd casually, until they found me. Her smile froze. Behind her, Robert strode with the swagger of a man who thought he owned the ground beneath his feet. Her mother trailed, carrying a duty-free bag stuffed with expensive perfumes. They stopped dead when they saw Daniel standing next to me. "David?" Emily's voice cracked the silence, soft but shaking. "What are you doing here?" Daniel stepped forward, calm and precise. He flipped open his briefcase, drew out a thick folder, and held it like a verdict. "What your husband is doing," he said evenly, "is giving you a chance to tell the truth before I do it for you." Robert's face hardened. "This is ridiculous. Who the hell are you?" Daniel's eyes never wavered. "The man who followed the money you stole. The man who has copies of every wire transfer, every email, every purchase you made with David's $20,000. He pulled out one of the glossy photos and held it up. Robert at the resort bar, champagne in hand, the bracelet glittering on Emily's wrist, the sun-drenched celebration of my betrayal. Emily's lips parted, but no words came. "Emily," I said quietly, my voice trembling but steady enough to cut through the noise of the crowd. "You told me they forgot my ticket. You told me it was just a mistake. But you knew. From the start, you knew." Her face paled, her hands shaking. "David, it wasn't like that." Daniel's voice sliced over hers. "Don't bother lying. Your personal account shows 18,000 deposited just days after the transfer. Shall I read the email where you reassured Robert I wouldn't cause trouble?" The color drained from Robert's face. For the first time, the mask of arrogance slipped. People were beginning to slow, to watch. The scene was too sharp, too raw to ignore. Emily reached for me, her eyes wide with panic. "Please, David, let's go somewhere private. We can explain." I stepped back, my voice breaking but firm. "No, for weeks I sat in that house, wondering if I was crazy, wondering if maybe you'd fight for me, if maybe this had been a mistake. But now, I see it for what it was." Robert snapped, his voice booming. "This is extortion!" "You can't prove a damn thing." Daniel didn't flinch. He placed the entire folder in my hands, then leaned forward so only Robert could hear. "Try me. The district attorney already has a copy." Robert's jaw clenched, sweat beading on his forehead. Emily's eyes filled with tears. She wasn't crying for me. She was crying because the world she'd built on deceit was collapsing in front of her. I straightened my shoulders, gripping the folder like a shield. For the first time since that airport gate, I didn't feel powerless. The silence that followed was heavier than any words. The game had shifted. and they knew it. The silence at the airport stretched until it became unbearable. Emily's tears streaked her face, Robert's arrogance crumbled, and her mother stood frozen, clutching her shopping bag like it could shield her from the truth. Daniel broke the silence with the precision of a judge delivering a sentence. "You have two options: return every cent and sign a written admission, or we move forward with charges. Fraud, conspiracy, wire transfers across state lines. You won't just lose money, you'll lose years of your lives." Robert opened his mouth to argue, but no sound came. His hands trembled. He glanced at Emily, at her mother, and saw no rescue waiting. Slowly, his shoulders sagged, the fight draining out of him. Emily looked at me then, desperation in her eyes. "David, please, we can fix this. I made a mistake, but I still—" I shook my head. My voice was steady, not cruel, but final. "You didn't make a mistake, Emily. You made a choice, and now I'm making mine." Her lips quivered, but she said nothing more. Within days, Daniel drafted the agreement. The money was wired back into my account, every dollar accounted for. They signed under the weight of his threat, and the knowledge that I would not hesitate to take it further if they resisted. But no piece of paper could undo the damage. The marriage was over. The trust was ash. I filed for divorce quietly, without fanfare, without revenge. I didn't need to scream or curse. The truth had done the work for me. Weeks later, I stood in my home, not the house where I'd been betrayed, but a new apartment overlooking the city. My furniture was simple, my nights were quiet, but for the first time in months, I felt peace. Daniel visited once more, setting a bottle of whiskey on my kitchen counter. "You know," he said, pouring 2 glasses, "most people I help never climb out of the hole. But you didn't just survive. You reclaimed yourself." I raised the glass, the amber liquid catching the light. "I guess sometimes you have to lose everything to realize what was never real to begin with." He clinked his glass against mine, his smile sharp but approving. "And sometimes you have to let betrayal burn the bridge, so you can finally walk your own road." That night I sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker like new possibilities. I thought of the man at the airport weeks earlier, the one left behind, humiliated, broken. He was gone now. In his place stood someone stronger, not a victim, not a fool, but a man who had stared into betrayal and chosen to rise above it. And as the city pulsed with life below me, I whispered to myself, not as a prayer, but as a promise, "This is only the beginning."